Okay, so if by the end of this video I don't convince you that Nara Smith uses some of the darkest, most psychologically manipulative marketing tactics I've literally ever seen used on social media, I will delete my entire account. All I ask is that you watch this video until the end with an open mind, and I have a master's degree in business and a specialization in marketing, so let's get into it. So just in case you are living under a rock, Nara Smith is an extremely famous influencer, mommy blogger, and model who has been sort of propelled to fame due to her highly public and highly controversial marriage to another very famous model named Lucky Blue Smith. This marriage was highly controversial at the time because she was only 18, with him being 24, and she has already had 3 children. She is most notably known for sort of creating this very highly idealistic form of fantasy content surrounding themes of motherhood, married life, and of course cooking, where she's become most notably famous for her make it from scratch videos, where she will make the most absurd recipes from scratch that nobody has the time to make, like bubblegum and sunscreen, which is also highly controversial. And she obviously is utilizing rage bait to increase engagement, and this style of content is what she is most known for and has sort of become a parody of itself. So the first dark marketing tactic that Nara Smith employs is something that I like to call strategic neutrality. So if you pay attention, Nara Smith has exclusively and very intentionally chosen to never respond to or engage in any controversy surrounding herself and her own personal brand. And if you want a more recent example of this, she has recently been accused of attempting to sue another TikToker by the name of Oneswa for allegedly stealing her content. So I personally looked into this because I was very interested, and the more I looked into it, the more I realized that this was a completely fabricated lie, and I don't believe that Oneswa ever received an email from Nara Smith at all. So you might be thinking, if this wasn't true, why wouldn't Nara Smith come in front of the camera and obviously defend her name? And the reason for this is that she has a huge team behind her that want to make her what I like to call an empty billboard. So an empty billboard is somebody who has a personal brand that has mass appeal and is universally relatable and appealing to a wide audience and a large demographic that is able to accomplish this without alienating any specific group, which is the most appealing thing to marketers and to brands. Nara Smith's content is designed to be universally appealing, which makes it commercially viable. So basically, because she never engages in any controversy, we don't know her political opinions, we aren't really intimately familiar with her beliefs and her values, there are things that she keeps extremely private, she's able to capitalize on these universally relatable themes of motherhood and cooking, which allows brands to basically co-opt her image and her brand for any product that they have, and it seamlessly fits in so perfectly because there's really nothing to contrast it. So you can really think of it as an empty billboard. It's a blank piece of paper, so anything that you put on it will stick and will integrate extremely well. If Nara Smith, for example, were to sit down and respond to a controversy she's been in, or speak about Palestine, for example, this would immediately shatter the fourth wall, ruin the idealistic perfect image and brand she's crafted for herself, because she would no longer be neutral, broadly acceptable, and highly marketable, which is what she wants to maximize the amount of money she's getting for brand deals, and also the entire ecosystem of management and brand partners and agencies that represent her, because they're also getting a cut of the product that she's selling, which is this perfect form of married life and basically a billboard for brands to implant their own idealistic images of their brands onto. I really feel if you guys were to fully grasp the actual amount of money that is at stake for a brand deal involving someone as famous as Nara Smith, at a very low, modest assumption, we can assume it's around $300,000. And if we analyze how many sponsored posts she's done in the past 12 months, it's been about 13, which does amount to about $4 million USD a year in sponsored posts alone. I'm not saying this to expose her or to rich shame anybody. God bless anyone making money. I really do not mind. That's not the issue. The issue is the lack of social media literacy when people consume content like hers and understanding the financial incentive behind it. For example, if for every 5 regular Nara Smith videos that she posts, there's 1 sponsored posts, the only reason that those 5 regular posts exist is to create a platform for her to monetize her account. So when you combine this lack of social media literacy, which really just refers to someone's ability to consume and digest content in a thoughtful, mindful way that is understanding the reality that what they are seeing is fake and has financial incentives behind it, combining that with this amazing illusion that Nara Smith has crafted for herself, we enter very dangerous territory in what this could be doing and the implications that this could have for younger women. So really, the issue isn't with Nara Smith herself, but with the fact that so many young women consume and perceive her content at face value with no critical understanding that behind every video that we've seen of Nara Smith, there are a team of people, there is a stylist, there is a management, there's an agency, there are nannies that allow her to have this effortless, seamless life, but that's never shown. If that were shown, she wouldn't have a brand. So I'm not criticizing Nara Smith, but there are real world implications with the type of content that we consume. And if you don't think that media creates subliminal messages that in the future results in people making decisions and choices and aspirations for their life, then you need to take a social studies class because it's objectively true. And if you need proof of this, look at how many women, millennial women specifically, have gotten on TikTok and spoken about the fact that they regret having children. And while it's extremely easy to just demonize them and say, well, that's an awful thing to say, it takes a critical eye and a thoughtful person to think, but okay, how did they get there? Were they misinformed of the realities and the complexities of having children? And aren't we doing society a disservice by presenting such an idealistic and completely unrealistic idea of what it means to be a mother and what it means to have children for 99% of people, which is what Nara Smith's content is? What could that be doing? Because when you read the comments, there are so many young women that have sort of graduated in an interesting way from the girl boss era of the Legally Blonde, thinking that that's the main aspiration, to now thinking that the main aspiration that they should have in life is to have their Nara Smith life of being more domesticated and being in the home and creating a life for themselves that revolves around motherhood exclusively. And before you throw choice feminism at me and say, well, it's her choice to have kids at a young age and to be a mom, of course it's her choice. I'm not taking that away or making my own personal moral judgment on whether or not it was right that Nara Smith got married at 18 to a man she only knew for 6 months and then had a baby 3 months after that. I'm not saying that. I'm simply trying to bring up the real world consequences of young women aspiring to that life, not being informed of the danger of losing their financial independence to a man who may or may not support them in the future, and rushing to have children because you subconsciously accepted extremely fake, fabricated, fantasy level content as reality. And if you think I'm being dramatic, I invite you to go to Nara Smith's comment section and read how many young women have truly internalized this false presentation, this false idea of reality and motherhood and married life, and have accepted it as real and attainable when it's not attainable for anybody, including Nara Smith. Nara Smith, the human being, does not really live that life. It is a highly engineered form of fiction. And in a perfect world, we would all consume Nara Smith's content and enjoy it the same way we enjoy a movie, understanding that it's fake. But unfortunately, the subconscious mind, even when it's watching a film, doesn't understand the difference between reality and fiction. That's why we feel emotionally connected to characters. That's why we get scared during horror movies, or why we cry during a romantic comedy. But this degree of separation between fiction and reality is even slimmer when we're watching social media content, because there are elements of reality. She is married to this man. Nara Smith is her name, and she does pepper in aspects of her life that are real, which tells the conscious and the subconscious mind that what we are viewing is attainable when it is just not. And if you were to visually see the actual team of people behind the curation of Nara Smith's content, you would understand how every minute detail, from the plates that she uses, to the clothes that she's wearing, to the voice that she uses that changed as her content progressed, you would understand that Nara Smith isn't really a person. She's a brand, and she is selling you something, whether it is a product or whether it is a lifestyle. What this is a consumable item, and it should be treated and understood as such. And this is why social media literacy should be something that is taught to young children, mandatory in schools. And just to prove to you how generic and predictable Nara Smith's brand really is, she will be coming out with a cookbook called From Scratch by Nara Smith, filled with infeasible recipes that nobody will ever be able to do, and it will just be a visual coffee table book. Damn it, guys, I ran out of time, so I didn't even get to talk about the one tactic that really makes Nara Smith such a supervillain, so I guess I'll probably have to make a part 2 if you want it. Okay, so let's continue the discussion of what makes Nara Smith such an evil genius supervillain. So I want to start by addressing some of the comments in the previous video that ironically just prove the entire point of that video, which is the utter lack of social media literacy and the inability for large groups of people to actually listen to a message, for example, when I'm trying to get across, and to comprehend that information. A lot of people were saying, he just hates stay-at-home moms. And there's 2 reasons why that's an incredibly stupid takeaway to take away from that video. The first being my own mother is a stay-at-home mom. She raised 5 kids completely on her own with no housekeepers or nannies, not saying that that's anything to be frowned upon. I'm just explaining to you the reality of my childhood, and that there's no part of me that thinks being a stay-at-home mom is not a real job or not something that could be very fulfilling or something that some women should aspire to or something that some women will find a lot of value in. I was simply expressing the importance of young women specifically understanding the realities and the complexities and what they're getting themselves into when they make such a permanent, life-changing decision as having kids. The second reason why that is such a silly comment to make is that Nara Smith is not a stay-at-home mom. Nara Smith is cosplaying as a stay-at-home mom. Nara Smith is a working woman. She is a fashion model that travels all over the world for editorial shoots and for runway shows, and a content creator that makes millions and millions of dollars every single year. And I think it would be pretty reasonable to assume that she's actually the breadwinner of that family. So she's actually an incredibly modern woman and the opposite of a traditional wife, despite the fact that she's using that aesthetic and masquerading as that for the primary theme of her content. Now that those disclaimers are out of the way, let's continue to discuss what makes the Nara Smiths of the world so problematic in a world that doesn't have any social media literacy at all. So the first is a term that I invented called influencer economics. So this kind of refers to the invisible ecosystem that exists on every single social media app behind 90% of the content that you see. So most content that you see has a commercial intention behind it, and influencers have sort of manipulated this perception that they have personal relationships with you and that they're simply existing to entertain you, when in reality, their entire financial health, their career, their ability to provide for themselves is all tied to pleasing external brands. So this is actually why I don't really appreciate it or honestly think it's very accurate when people refer to me as an influencer, because I've actively rejected every single brand deal that's ever been offered to me because I am trying to create a different path for myself, and I consider myself an entrepreneur because yes, this is a business account. I do have my own company, but they're products that I created completely myself with my own money, for my own mind, for a business that I own 100% of. And I'm selling things that I feel add a lot of value to people's lives that didn't exist before. So there creates an independence there. That's why I'm able to be a lot more honest than other people on this app, because their entire livelihood depends on being favored by brands. So this results in influencers like Nara Smith prioritizing brand-friendly content over authenticity, which results in the very curated, robotic, artificial image that we see of her. What you're seeing is not a real person, it's a brand, and the fact that so many people took issue with that is actually terrifying to me, that you can't make that distinction, because Nara Smith, the human being, none of us really know her. I have no emotionally charged feelings toward that person. I'm simply discussing her public persona, which has been curated for consumption purposes. If I was speaking about the issues of the Joker from The Dark Knight, nobody would conflate that with Heath Ledger saying, leave Heath Ledger alone. You understand that that's a character. But when it comes to social media, you guys don't have that same understanding because of the power of these parasocial relationships. The next dark marketing tactic that Nara Smith employs is something called perpetual aspiration, which is really the strategy of presenting an image that is highly desirable, but ultimately unattainable, which kind of keeps the audience in a constant state of wanting more. Think the Kardashians, it's what they've built their entire empire on. So Nara Smith presents a perfect life to her viewers that people want to aspire to, but can never really achieve because it's completely fake. And this perpetual aspiration, this being insatiable of always wanting more, is really the core marketing principle that is why consumerism exists in the first place. Because marketing really relies on creating a gap between the consumer's current state and their aspirational state. And there's really no better example of somebody that personifies this more than Nara Smith, because she's showcasing a life to us that seems perfect and within reach, but just subtly out of reach, which causes consumers to want to bridge that gap by buying the products she so subtly promotes in her videos. Which brings us to our next dark marketing tactic, which is subliminal messaging, which is basically using subtle imagery and cues specifically designed to influence viewers' thoughts and behaviors without them being fully aware of it. So Nara Smith is a successful model, which means she has a very adept and advanced understanding of her image and how she's perceived by other people. And as a fashion model, Nara's job really is to be a mannequin, to be a blank canvas. You put on the clothes, you sell a lifestyle, you look desirable, and you aren't really being hired to share your personal opinions. You're simply there to execute the vision of the fashion designer or the art director or whoever it may be. Models are really selling a fantasy and a lifestyle, which is this blank canvas effect for other brands to project their ideals onto. So then Nara Smith extends this role to her social media presence, where she's not just selling clothes, but an entire lifestyle that she's created. So Nara Smith is signed to a modeling agency called IMG, and they have very deep connected relationships with all of these high luxury brands like Prada, Givenchy, Schiaparelli, all of these people, and she's modeling their clothes, but not really disclosing the fact that she has direct financial ties with these companies. Not to mention the fact that in multiple of the posts that she's made, she has very much made a very intentional effort to hide the fact that it's an advertisement in the first place. As I've spoken about before on TikTok, you're supposed to toggle the feature that it says paid partnership if you were paid for a post. Nara Smith has omitted doing this in several of the posts that she's made, the most recent one being Liquid IV, where if you watch that video, you don't even know it's an ad until the very end. She's talking about her life and motherhood and her lifestyle and who she is, and at the very end, she's like, by the way, I like Liquid IV. This type of subliminal messaging is so powerful because it comes across as very gentle. It doesn't come across as hard selling. And because she has a very non-threatening persona, which again has been crafted specifically to maximize her own profit, makes her ads very persuasive, which is why she's in that handful of influencers that is paid 6 figures for a brand deal. This type of gentle subliminal messaging that Nara Smith engages in is a form of psychological manipulation because it tricks the consumer or the viewer into believing that they chose to purchase that product because they're not aware of the marketing tactics and the agencies and the hundreds of thousands of dollars that went behind that commercial, because it doesn't appear like a commercial. Another dark marketing tactic that Nara Smith uses is manipulating the parasocial relationships she has with her fans, which is basically this one-sided emotional connection, which results in people commenting on my videos defending Nara Smith like it's their own sister. How dare you speak about her this way? Because again, they feel a human connection to somebody that has no idea who they are, which is deeply, deeply troubling. So Nara Smith very carefully navigates these parasocial relationships by engaging in her audience with some personal stories about her marriage, about her struggles with eczema, but then you'll see she then uses those personal stories to sell ads. Seed probiotics helped me because I used to have eczema. This moisturizer helped me because I had eczema. So she's purposefully using aspects of her life that are true and intimate details about herself suffering with this disease, but ultimately is doing it again to maximize profit because there are a huge team of people behind her that are incentivizing her to make as much money as possible. And I'm not sitting here judging you for having an emotional connection with someone online. We've all fallen victim to that. And I have met several influencers and celebrities in person. And the moment you meet them, it sort of shatters that false perception you had of them in your mind. And you see them for what they are, which is just a regular flawed person. What I'm trying to do is help you understand that when you're on your phone, there should be a little bit of mental separation that you have, understanding the people that you're watching, you don't really know them, and you really should start viewing it more as a play or as a movie, so you know in the back of your mind that there are so many people behind the scenes that may not have the best motives. And being aware of this, I think, is extremely important so you can consume and enjoy social media in a healthy way. And I do think it's possible to have a healthy relationship with social media and does add a lot of good and value to society. But we do need to be aware of some of these tactics and how we're being manipulated.